But Tina Fey, you're a writer, you're a producer, you're an actress, an impressionist, a performer. You write screenplays, you write teleplays. Now you're an author. My question is this: why no banjo?
Not many people know this, but my parents were brutally murdered by Earl Scruggs. And I don't remember it because it was before I was born.
Oh, didn't. It's interesting you would leave something like that out of the book. I mean, sort of disqualifies the book as a memoir, in my view.
Okay. No, well, I had studied drama and playwriting at the University of Virginia, and so anybody? Yeah. Wahoo wah. And I knew that I wanted to do something, and I wanted to be on stage. But anytime I studied any kind of proper acting technique, it never quite made any sense to me. They tried to teach us Stanislavski and all this stuff, and I never knew what I was supposed to really be thinking about during the play, and inevitably I would think about, what I'm going to eat later and that kind of thing, which I knew was wrong, but and so I somehow knew, just from growing up watching Saturday Night Live and SCTV, which were gigantic to me. Yes, you should clap for that. And that I wanted to be like those people, and so after I graduated, I moved to Chicago, and Chicago. There's gonna be so many applause points.
I know. Yeah.
I bought a Ford.
You're a master. You're a master at this. Yes.
I walked past an American flag. So I went to Chicago.
So you moved to Chicago
right after college.
to hopefully be in Second City.
To try to study improv and to be in Second City if I could, to even get in the training center if I could. Second City, another one. Improv Olympic, anyone? There's another theater there that I studied with Del Close, among many other people. Yes, old junkies.
Yeah.
Old dead junkies. That's what he is.
I'm surprised that Training Center didn't get an applause at this rate. Go ahead.
So I started doing that, and that was something that finally made sense to me because it was sort of a combination of acting and writing, and I learned that you're only supposed to focus on your partner, and I finally had the answer of what am I supposed to be thinking about, and you're supposed to truly be listening and all that stuff. And so so we would tour around. Because you're in a play and you're listening, you're like, yeah, I'm listening, but I heard the same thing last night. With improv, it's truly different every night.
But were you enchanted with show business as a youngster?
Yes. Doesn't everyone?
Well, I was.
Sure.
But I just wondered if you had favorites as a child, going, wow, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, there was that block of TV that was. Mary Tyler Moore and into Bob Newhart, into the Carol Burnett show. That was, that was everything.
Right.
And then SNL and SCTV and Monty Python and all these things. So the usual suspects. You,
any
you.
other comedians?
You, of course.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. So go ahead. I'm.
Well, you were on SNL a lot at that time too. That's probably where I would have seen you then.
Or maybe tonight is the first time you've actually met me. I don't know. So how did the writing? I'm very curious how you got from. Tell us about your life on. Is that where you met Amy Poehler first of all?
Yes. So then Amy Poehler and I were on a. You better clap for Amy. Amy Poehler and I were in our first improv team together at Improv Olympic, and then we were in the same touring company together at the Second City, which meant there were 8 of us in a van that would drive around for $75 a show. But sometimes you would have to drive 2 days to get to the show, and then drive 2 days back.
Right.
It was not.
So you'd make $75 for 5 days.
Yes. But it was show business.
Ooh.
Yeah. And even then, I was still studying playwriting on the side in Chicago, and even then I sort of knew that my purpose within the company was kind of a writer's purpose to help generate ideas and stuff, and that there were other people that were more the character people. But I just thought, well, but I'm in the door, you know, so that.
So when by the time you get to Lorne Michaels' office, which Tina went in and had an interview with Lorne as a writer, you must have had some credits to your name, or.
Well, I was in the main stage company at Second City, and they had come to Talent Scout Second City once or twice, and were not interested in me as a performer.
Well, that's crazy.
It's not that crazy.
Yeah.
And and then a friend of mine, Adam McKay, who had left Second City.
Adam McKay. Okay.
McKay was the head writer, and so I emailed him and said I want to apply for a writing job. And so you write a submission, which are invariably terrible. You work really hard on them, and I've now read hundreds and hundreds of them, and they're painful. They're very hard to do. But I think because, you know, Adam knew me a little bit, so I got to come in and have the interview and meet Lorne. I came from Chicago, like on my day off from Second City, with my little weird short haircut and my chenille sweater from Contempo Casuals, and I went up to meet Lorne, and the only thing that anyone had advised me was, whatever you do, don't finish his sentences. And a woman I knew in Chicago had felt that she had made that mistake, and it had cost her the job, and was like, okay, I'm gonna go in there, I'm not gonna blow this. And they finally called me in, and I sat across from Lorne, and he just looked at me and said, so you're from... And my heart was just in my mouth. I was like, don't finish it, whatever you do, don't finish it. And it just seemed to hang there for so long that I really thought someone was just gonna come in after an hour and just say, like, you can go now. And finally I couldn't take it anymore, and I just, right as I was blurting out, like, I'm from Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, he finished, he was like, Chicago. And I thought, well, that's it. I've blown it. Well, he looks like Clint Eastwood, and he has this kind of naturally stern countenance that, as a kid, would terrify me. I would be at a Little League game or something, I would be in a Little League game, and he would say, you're not concentrating. And I would say, I am concentrating. And he'd say, you just think you're concentrating. Like, so exhausting for a 9-year-old kid. I'm like, but I think it, imparted a real kind of work ethic and a desire to please him that has actually paid off.
But it sounds like you have a great relationship with him.
I do, yeah.
And you describe him as a conservative politically, and you're obviously liberal in your politics. And how does that work itself out?
It works fine. It's I might describe him as a Goldwater Republican, and I emailed him saying, does that sound about right to you, a Goldwater Republican? And he emailed me the longest answer. I should have printed it. He's like, yes, and then he listed 5 books that he's read recently. That because it's hard because he's even if you want to kind of argue any political point with him, which we don't particularly, he has read 10 more things than you, and so he's just like, never mind.
And you're a very pretty woman. You always have been.
Thank you.
And yet, the cover is sort of, if you look at, there's a nice picture of Tina, and then with man's hairy arms. And then on the back, there's sort of a photo of yourself when you were a young girl you describe as the worst haircut, a terrible haircut. And then every quote is a parody of a quote. It's sort of negative. Here's a quote from a college boyfriend: "You'd be really pretty if you lost weight." Here's a quote from your father: "I hope that's not really the cover. That's really going to hurt sales."
They're all real, by the way. Those are both real.
Pardon me?
Those are both real.
I understand that those are real. I understand that. Once in a generation, a woman comes along who changes everything. Tina Fey is not that woman. There's humor, but you also go to every opportunity to sort of deny your own, kind of deny a talent. I know it's done in a parody sense. I'm just wondering if there's something psychological going on here, or,
Well, we talked about the Earl Scruggs incident.
Pardon me?
The Earl Scruggs incident was formative. No.
I mean, did the book company fight you on all
Yes.
these negative things?
No, they were not keen on this cover. They wanted a more neutral cover. And for me, I felt like I just wanted to make sure this looked different than a magazine article where where it's a magazine presenting you and I don't know what this says about me that's how I preferred to present myself, but
Yeah.
I said, yeah, let's do nice Photoshop up here and nice makeup, but I wanted to make sure there was some kind of joke to the picture. It's a very confusing line that women have to walk, because you want to look good enough that they let you stay in show business, but you don't want to become carried away. I mean, I don't really care truly that much about whether it's about being fancy. So,
Well, I think that there's a section called the Internet, in which Tina writes answers to some, what do you call them, little blog postings on the Internet that she'd found about herself. I don't know if you actually posted it. I assume you didn't.
I didn't post them, but they are real. The initial things are real.
The postings are real, these comments about Tina, and then she wrote, responses that you would like to make.
I wanted to treat them like genuine
Right.
correspondence.
So I'd like to read these to you because they're just so brilliant. This is from, it doesn't matter where the website is, but posted by Centurious on Monday, 9/21/2009 at 2:08 a.m. Tina Fey is an ugly, pear-shaped, bitchy, overrated troll. Dear Centurious, first let me say how inspiring it is that you have learned to use a computer. I hate for our correspondence to be confrontational, but you have offended me deeply. To say I'm an overrated troll when you have never even seen me guard a bridge is patently unfair. I'll leave it for others to say if I'm the best, but I am certainly one of the most dedicated trolls guarding bridges today. I always ask 3 questions, at least 2 of which are riddles. As for ugly, pear-shaped, and bitchy, I prefer the terms offbeat, business class-assed, and exhausted. But I'll take what I get. There's no such thing as bad press. Now go to bed, you crazy night owl. You have to be at NASA early in the morning. So they can look for your penis with the Hubble telescope. This is another one posted by Jerk Store on Wednesday, 11:21 p.m. In my opinion, Tina Fey completely ruined SNL. The only reason she's celebrated is because she's a woman and an outspoken liberal. She has not a single funny bone in her body. Dear Jerk Store, huzzah for the truth teller. Women in this country have been over-celebrated for too long. Just last night, there was a story on my local news about a missing girl, and they must have dedicated 7 or 8 minutes to where she was last seen and how she might have been abducted by a close family friend. And I thought, what is this? The news for chicks? Then there was some story about Hillary Clinton flying to some country because she's Secretary of State. Why do we keep talking about these dum-dums? We are a society that constantly celebrates no one but women, and it must stop. I want to hear what men of the world have been up to. What fun new guns have they invented? What are they raping these days? what's Michael Bay's next film going to be? When I first set out to ruin SNL, I didn't think anyone would notice. But I persevered because, like you, trying to do a 9-piece jigsaw puzzle, it was a labor of love. I'm not one to toot my own horn, but I feel safe with you, jerk store. So I'll say it. Everything you ever hated on SNL was by me, and everything you ever liked was by someone else who did it against my will. Sincerely, Tina Fey. P.S. You know who does have a funny bone in her body? Your mom, every night for $1. That is...
very often people will want to ask, oh, SNL, it was such a boys' club, was that difficult for you? And for many reasons, it was not. I mean, first of all, I think I was there at a very lucky time. I think if you talk to Jane Curtin or Lorraine Newman, they might have a different experience, even up through, Janine Garofalo, I think, had a very different experience than Amy and Molly and Anna and I had. Because there was strength in numbers and there were more of us. And the world had kind of changed a little bit.
Right.
Even the fact that there were more women in media in other places to parody and more women in politics to parody, it helped the women get on the show more easily. And also when people say like, oh, SNL's so hard for women, I was like, but did you notice that women are often, from the beginning, have been stars on SNL?
Right, and really funny.
Really
always. That's
funny,
why I didn't
always.
understand it.
And then it's sort of, I find that it's when they leave SNL is where the gender disparity seems to happen, that the men go on to be very successful movie stars and the women less so, and not because of their ability. But Second City was a place where it was, it was an older institution. It had been around since 1959, and the touring companies were 3 men, 3 women, but the main stage companies were always 4 men and 2 women. And they would improvise the show and make it up. And the reasoning behind it was always like, well, there won't be enough parts for the girls if we have 3 and 3. It was like, but they're making it up. It was like a big hole in the logic there. And I think there was sort of a semi-unspoken thing of like, listen, if you're a woman in Second City and you leave with a husband or a television career, either one is good. If you find a husband, Joyce would be just as happy if you left with a husband.
As you look back over your now lengthy career,
almost
really.
Done.
What? No. Don't you? First of all, don't you think you're going to be in show business your whole life?
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
I mean, I think it's very clear that you're going to be in show business because, one is that you're a writer, and it's not a person. You're not a person who's going to be sitting. Got anything for me today, Mr. Agent? You'll be creating your things for your whole life. But I'm looking back. What are some of your? Oh, first of all, I just want to comment. Tell you a story about Tina. That I've had a couple of experiences working with her, and once we were asked to co-present on the Oscars. And so we're emailing back and forth, and they said, "What do you think about this?" And and she read. I said, "Yeah, it sounds like it could be fun, but I don't know what would we do." I send that email to her, and it's like an hour goes by, and she goes, I get an email back. It says, "How about this?" And there's attached, a 2-page bit, all written. I'm going, "Yeah, that's good," and that's what we did. And it was great. And then
I had been at the show for a couple years, and it was actually it must have been the fall of 2001 that Amy joined the show, and I had been there since '97, I guess, as a writer, and she was new to the show, but she was very confident because she had her own show before. The Upright Citizens Brigade had a show, and they were doing, around the big read-through table, before we actually started the table read, she was goofing around doing some kind of bit that neither one of us can quite remember what it was, but it must have been something a little bit crass or vulgar, and she was, doing something gross or whatever, and Jimmy Fallon, who was kind of the star of the show at the time, was seated next to her, And he looked at her and said, he's like, stop it, stop doing that, it's not cute, I don't like it. And he was kind of like teasing her about it. And when I knew this about her personality, but she just kind of was doing it, and then he said, stop it, it's not cute. And she wheeled on him and just said, I don't fucking care if you like it. And then just went back to doing whatever she was doing. And she startled him, and I was sitting in the crowd, and I just remember that moment being like, oh, things is gonna change around here. I was a Star Wars nerd as a kid. More than one, thank you. Yeah, it's really unique. No one is really into that movie but me. I did, for Halloween once as a kid, I dressed up as C-3PO, not Princess Leia. And the writers are, of course, all a bunch of nerds. And so we do have, over the years, have had many Star Wars references. Only once or twice have I let them give me something Star Wars to say that was beyond my actual Star Wars knowledge. I can't remember them now. I think there was one time where I was like, all right, now I'm cheating, because this is high-level nerdery. Yes, Mean Girls, actually, I was thinking when you asked me what things I worked on that I'm proud of. I am very proud of Mean Girls.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It came from, there was an article in the New York Times about this woman, Ross Wiseman, who was going around schools and doing these workshops and interventions with girls, and I took it to Lauren and said, maybe this could be a movie, and I could play the woman. And then as I wrote about 100 drafts of it, and then my part just kept getting smaller and smaller, wisely, I think, because the girls were the more interesting part. And so I was always meant to play that part, but when I first started, I was a lot bigger I was on the poster. And then
that's how you can tell your part has really gotten too small.
My imaginary poster.
No longer on the poster.
Well, people who really get into improv, it's sort of like a cult to them. It's all they talk about, it's all they do all the time. And in the book I talk about those kind of basic rules of improv, being, saying yes and being in the
Explain
moment.
what you mean by that.
Well, saying yes means, it's if we're improvising and I say, freeze, I have a gun, and you say, that's not a gun.
Yeah.
That's a banana.
That's saying no.
That's denying, and that kind of ruins the scene. And so you're trained to kind of respect what the other person has started. And if I say freeze, this is a gun, then you say whatever you want to say.
So I'm supposed to improv back.
If you want.
Just give me a minute.
People with a stand-up background approach it differently.
Just go. Continue answering.
You see.
Answer the question.
So that's agreement, and kind of trying to stay in the present is a big thing about improv, and not dwelling in the past or the future. It's a lot of the same.
That's not a gun.
No, so it's still. It was good.
Okay.
And so I think it gave me a kind of a more positive worldview, and with approaching problems, and just always feeling like, there's always a yes to be had, there's always a solution to be had, that kind of thing. Someone's walkie-talkie went off.